Alright guys, so today what we're going to get into in this section is before we were dealing with graphing in different forms. Now we're going to learn how to write in different forms. And what I mean by that is we're going to learn how to write an equation given a certain amount of things. So let's say if I gave you the slope. Let's say if I said the slope was equal to -3 and then the y-intercept was equal to 1/2. Alright, so you guys need to know a couple things, which you already do know. You already do know the easiest form when they give you a slope and a y-intercept, that you should use what? Slope-intercept form, right? So we know that that is a line, and all we need to write that is a slope and a y-intercept. And then you're like, well, yeah, Mr. Dashlow, we have that. This one should be straightforward for you guys. All you have to do is, because you know that this is your m value and this is your b value, okay? So all you have to do is rewrite it in that form, and then you're done. So don't make this more complicated than it is. It's pretty straightforward, right? All we have to do is, if they ask us to write an equation of a line given a slope and the y-intercept, it doesn't say what form to put it into. If it doesn't say what form to put it in, do what's the easiest for you to put it into. So this would probably, for me, would be the easiest one, because think about it. You have a slope and the y-intercept. That's what slope-intercept form is. So just yell that out real quick. See if anybody else will stare at you like you're a little strange. Just say it. Y equals mx plus b. Remember that form. You guys have been doing it for a long time. Most of you guys should know it. If you're new to this, yell it out a few times. Make sure that you remember it. All right, let's look at a new example. All right, let's take a look at this one. So you know how to write an equation when they give you the slope and the y-intercept. Now, what happens if they just give you the graph and they want us to write the equation of that? Well, let's look at determine what they give us first. Let's see if we have enough information if we wanted to put it into this form, right? Okay, so y equals mx plus b. The two things you need, slope and the y-intercept. So looking at this, oh, beautiful, I do have the y-intercept. So you guys do know that the b value is -3. So in this formula, really, all we need now is the slope. So there's a couple of different ways you can do the slope. The first way I'm going to show you is we're going to use the slope formula. And you guys know that is the slope formula. So remember that. This is going to be helpful later on in this video, so remember that. Now when you go to do this, you can really call these anything that you want. I'm going to call this one x sub 1, y sub 1. There's really no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing. I'm just basically, this is my first point and my second point, so that's why I'm doing the way I'm doing. So I'm going to do my x values first. So I'm going to sub in x sub 2, 4 minus 0. So just take a look at what I did there. I just took the x sub 2, which goes here, x sub 1, which goes here, so it's really 4 minus 0. And then I'm going to do y sub 2, which is 3, and oh, what did I do here? This should have been y sub 1. So hopefully you guys caught that. And you're like, Mr. Dashlow, you're yelling at your screen. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1, so it would be 3 minus -3. Now, anytime there's a negative like that, what I like to do is I like to do the subtraction rule, which is you add the opposite, or I just think flip. So boom, boom. This would be 6 over 4, which would really be 3 over 2. Boom. We got the slope. We're all set now. All you have to do is substitute that in, and that would be your final equation. Now you might say, well, can I find the slope a different way? Yeah, absolutely you can. If you have the graph, and if you want to, you can really just count and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So if you think about it, that would be a rise of 6, and then I could a run of 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm really running over 4 units here. So a rise of 6, a run of 4. Do you notice you get the same exact thing that we just did down there? So if you don't want to use the slope formula on this one, when you do have a graph, you could technically count. Counting box method would be totally fine, but sometimes you're not always going to be given the graph. That's why I'm saying later on we're going to have to use the slope formula. But other than that, that's how you find an equation when you're given a graph. All right, so now you guys know how to write an equation when you're given some specifics like a slope and a y-intercept, or even if they give you a graph, you know how to write the equation given the graph. Now let's say they just give us 2 points. They're not giving us a graph, and I'm not saying, hey, put this on a graph. So what we want to do is if they give you 2 points, and depending on how they want you to write this, I think I'm going to stick with slope-intercept form on this, because the fact that I can see that this guy right here is a y-intercept. So I have a y-intercept, right? I have a b value. So I have that b value, which is great. So now all I need to do is find the slope. And you might say, well, how do I do that? Well, you do know how to do that, right? You guys do know that this guy right here is the slope formula. So, and you can go any way you want to do this. You can call this one x sub 1, y sub 1, or if you want to do x sub 2, y sub 2 here, you could as well. Right? So x sub 2, y sub 2, totally up to you. So if the person 5 miles down the road from you wanted to do it that way, you should both get the same answer if your math is correct. So I'm just going to leave it like this. And now all I'm going to do is substitute in the values. So y sub 2 goes here, y sub 1 goes here. So I'm just doing -1. So take a minute, pause that, understand what I'm doing there. Now I'm taking x sub 2, pumping it in there, or substituting it in there, and x sub 1 is -3. So when I go to do this, this always helps me. I always like to do adding instead of subtraction, because the subtraction rule says you can add the opposite. So flip, flip, that becomes -6. Flip, flip, that becomes +3, which is a lot easier for me. So now I do know that my slope on this guy is going to be -2. So I have my slope. Perfect. Pretty easy then, right? Now you have everything you need for this, and we yelled this out previously, right? Y equals mx plus b. That is the form that we're using for most of these. We're not trying to make this difficult for ourselves, so then all we have to do is substitute in the m value in the b value, and then we're all set. So now you know, given 2 points, you know how to write the equation of that line. All right, so remember, pause this, rewind it if you need to. We're going to do one more example. All right, so now let's say if they give us a linear function with these values. So f of 0 equals 10 and f of 6 equals 34. So we have to kind of think back previously to, well, what's the x value and what's the y value? So in my head, I already know that, but you might not know that this is your x value and this is your y value. So what I'll probably do, or what I would suggest to do, is just to rewrite it as a coordinate, right? Just as a point. And the same thing here, that this is an x value and this is a y value. So I know the point here is 6, 34. So if you look at this and you go, okay, this is very similar to the previous example, right? So you know that, all right, 0, 10, perfect. I know 0, 10, that's my b value. That is one of the values that I need for when I put it into slope-intercept form. All right, so now from here, you guys might go, okay, well, I have the b value. I just need to find the m value. And you might go, well, how do I do that? You already know how to do that. You probably could just skip over this and be like, I know how to do that. And we're going to go ahead and figure out what that would be. So I'll call this one x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. But again, totally up to you on how you want to arrange that. Remember, it's always x, y, though. You can't just do anything crazy. But you should be good. So now it's going to be 6 minus 0. So on the top, we would have 34 minus 10. Don't have to do the add the opposite here because this one's pretty straightforward. And we would say 24 over 6 would be 4. So I know that my slope is going to be no longer a question mark, but it is 4. So you guys should have no problem once you get to this point, because this is stuff we've been doing for a long time. That is the equation in line. When they give us something funky that looks like that, when it's in the function notation, which some of you guys are real good with and some of us are getting a little bit better with, but if you're confused on that, just remember that this is your input, this is your output. So input is your x, output is your y. Input is your x, output is your y. And then just rewrite it as a coordinate or an ordered pair, and you should be good. So remember, when you're taking notes here, put little tips on here that's going to help you remember this stuff. Don't just copy down what I'm writing. Copy down maybe some of the things that I'm saying, some of the things that stand out to you, because when you look back at these notes, you want to have reference points. You want to make sure that you're understanding what's going on as you go through this. So that's basically this section in a nutshell, and I will see you guys in class.